Alright, guys, I'm back for another chapter in Luke. We are in chapter 20, where it reads, Religious leaders challenge Jesus' authority. I got to share with you guys that I did just get done with a Bible reading with some of my fellow church members and our pastor. And they just shared some things about the Bible that really just challenged my understanding of just certain entire books that I've read of the Bible, specifically Job. And man, just when you think you're starting to understand this thing, you just have no idea. And just how intricate it is, and the importance of every lesson, and how each lesson leads to another lesson. And the big thing is that it just tells us the one united love story. And I kind of like it. I really dig it. So this is definitely my favorite book that I've ever read. But I'm going to hop right into it so that we can get through 2020's a little bit longer of a chapter. So here we go. One day, as Jesus was teaching the people and preaching the good news in the temple, the leading priests, the teachers of religious law, and the elders came up to him. They demanded, "By what authority are you doing all these things? Who gave you the right?" "Let me ask you a question first," he replied. Did John's authority to baptize come from heaven, or was it merely human?" They talked it over among themselves. "If we say it is from heaven, he will ask why we didn't believe John. But if we say it was merely human, the people will stone us because they are convinced John was a prophet." So they finally replied that they didn't know. And Jesus responded, "Then I won't tell you by what authority I do these things." Jesus tells the parable of the evil farmers. Now Jesus turned to the people again and told them this story. A man planted a vineyard, leased it to tenant farmers, and moved to another country to live for several years. At the time of the grape harvest, he sent one of his servants to collect his share of the crop. But the farmers attacked the servant, beat him up, and sent him back empty-handed. So the owner sent another servant, but they also insulted him, beat him up, and sent him away empty-handed. A third man was sent, and they wounded him and chased him away. "What will I do?" the owner asked himself. "I know. I'll send my cherished son. Surely they will respect him." But when the tenant farmers saw his son, they said to each other, "Here comes the heir of this estate. Let's kill him and get the estate for ourselves." So they dragged him out of the vineyard and murdered him. "What do you suppose the owner of the vineyard will do to them?" Jesus asked. "I'll tell you. He will come and kill those farmers and lease the vineyard to others." "How terrible that such a thing should ever happen," his listeners protested. Jesus looked at them and said, "Then what does the scripture mean? The stone that the builders rejected has now become the cornerstone. Everyone who stumbles over that stone will be broken to pieces, and it will crush anyone it falls on." The teachers of religious law and the leading priests wanted to arrest Jesus immediately because they realized he was telling the story about them. They were the wicked farmers, but they were afraid of the people's reaction. Religious leaders questioned Jesus about paying taxes. Watching for their opportunity, the leaders sent spies pretending to be honest men. They tried to get Jesus to say something that could be reported to the Roman governor so he would be arrested, and so he would arrest Jesus. "Teacher," they said, "we know that you speak and teach what is right and are not influenced by what others think. You teach the way of God truthfully. Now tell us, is it right for us to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" He saw through their trickery and said, "Show me a Roman coin." "Whose picture and title are stamped on it?" "Caesar's," they replied. "Well then," he said, "give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and give to God what belongs to God." So they failed to trap him by what he said in front of the people. Instead, they were amazed by his answer, and they became silent. Religious leaders questioned Jesus about the resurrection. Then Jesus was approached by some Sadducees, religious leaders who say there is no resurrection from the dead. They posed this question: "Teacher, Moses gave us a law that if a man dies, leaving a wife but no children, his brother should marry the widow and have a child who will carry on the brother's name. Well, suppose there were 7 brothers. The oldest one married and then died without children, so the second brother married the widow, but he also died. Then the third brother married her. This continued with all 7 of them, who died without children. Finally, the woman also died. So tell us, whose wife will she be in the resurrection? For all 7 were married to her." Jesus replied, "Marriage is for people here on earth, But in the age to come, those worthy of being raised from the dead will neither marry nor be given in marriage, and they will never die again. In this respect, they will be like angels. They are children of God and children of the resurrection. But now, as to whether the dead will be raised, even Moses proved this when he wrote about the burning bush. Long after Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had died, he referred to the Lord as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. So he is the God of the living, not the dead, for they are all alive to him. Well said, teacher, remarked some of the teachers of religious law who were standing there, and then no one dared to ask him any more questions. Religious leaders cannot answer Jesus' question. Then Jesus presented them with a question. Why is it, he asked, that the Messiah is said to be the son of David? For David himself wrote in the book of Psalms, "The Lord said to my Lord, sit in the place of honor at my right hand, until I humble your enemies, making them a footstool under your feet." Since David called the Messiah Lord, how can the Messiah be his son? Jesus warns against the religious leaders. Then with the crowds listening, he turned to his disciples and said, "Beware of these teachers of religious law, for they like to parade around in flowing robes and love to receive respectful greetings as they walk in the marketplace. And how they love the seats of honor in the synagogues and the head table at banquets. Yet they shamelessly cheat widows out of their property and then pretend to be pious by making long prayers in public. Because this, they will be severely punished." And that is the end of Luke chapter 20. I have to say, the biggest thing for me is at the beginning when God's talking about the religious leaders of the time, and he makes a remark on the religious leaders fearing reprisal from the people based on what they believe and not on based on what the religious leaders believe. So they were afraid to punish Jesus because the people believed him. And I think that if you're a leader and you love the people that you serve and you're a teacher, the fact that you would be on such opposite ends of the people that you serve, you couldn't see that fault of your own. And not that, there shouldn't be a discerning eye, and even God tells us, if someone comes back now and says, "Hey, I'm Jesus," and can start to do so, say, "Oh, there are certain things that are going to happen now that I've come and gone. When I come back again, it's going to look like this." And we're told to kind of ward against that, because there will be people that come and say, "Hey, I'm him. This is how we're doing this. There are going to be some miracles that happen. But hey, that's not how I'm coming back. So don't follow it. Don't go out to the wilderness where they're trying to trick you and deceive you and do all these other things." And I just think it's so weird that the people that they're teaching to, as the Sadducees, and not the Sadducees, but the Pharisees and the other religious leaders, the people that they teach or are supposed to be teaching are seeing Jesus and be like, "Oh no, this is the guy we've been waiting for." And they would all just like, "No, that's not him. They can't be." And I get so confused by that. And I guess it's not so confused. I'm beside myself at the sense that they would be so wrapped up in the letter of the law that they can't see the spirit of the law right in front of them. That's so filled with love, that just wants to embrace everybody, and is filled with wisdom, like was so intellectually profound, so ahead of his time in how he talked to people and how he could poke holes in their traps that they set for him, intellectual traps, and they still hated him for it. And he also tells us that he came to divide households, that whoever follows him, there's going to be people against you, and their whole sole purpose is going to be to destroy you. And I just think that it's crazy that they had the same source documents and couldn't see the truth that Jesus was. And people that had no business, or at least what they thought had no business to be with him, could see it. I know there's a whole bunch of scriptures based on the hardening of hearts and the importance of that understanding when seeing why they couldn't see Jesus for what he was. But I would just think someone that was so studious of the Old Testament they'd be waiting on their toes and just on pins and needles, waiting for him to come back, and they chose to kill him. And then they didn't see that they were fulfilling prophecy in doing so, and fulfilling the very words that Jesus spoke to them in the parable with the vineyard. Say, hey, I sent all these prophets to this land that I gave to you guys. I sent all the prophets. Kept beating them up, sending them out, getting rid of them. And then I send my son, and you kill him. What do you think I have in store for you then? So it's crazy how even to the people that were going to betray him, he was letting him know that he knows they're going to do that. Excuse me. And he loves you and forgives you anyway. I mean, way to kill him with kindness, Jesus. On that note, I love you. Jesus loves you. Have a good night. God bless. And tomorrow we'll read Luke chapter 21. A poor widow gives all she has. Have a good night, guys.